Several years ago, I went on a trip to Gulu in northern Uganda. And right outside Gulu is an area called Peche Village. And we had started a nonprofit charity, Generosity Water, generosity.org, and we had begun to fund hand pump water wells. This was my first opportunity to go and see some of the wells that we had actually put in there. We had put some, I'll show you a photo here of the wells we had one in the school that was a local school there, and then this is in the school with some of the students, and then we also had one out in the community, and this allowed us to be able to bring fresh, clean water to these people. And to see the joy and the gratitude and just the excitement in their faces was so inspiring, and it was so genuine coming from them. And while we were there was a big celebration, and they had music and different things going on. This one young boy came up to me, and he was kind of standing beside me, and then I looked at him. He looked up at me, and he said, "Will you be my friend?" And I wasn't sure what that meant to him, but I said, "Yeah, I'll be your friend." And then I asked the translator, "Did I get myself into something that I don't know?" But I asked him what he liked to do, and I asked him what some of his dreams are. And he told me he liked to go to school, and that's a rare opportunity there. He said he liked to go to school, and then he said, I got kicked out. And so in getting more clarity from the translator, what he meant was that he could no longer pay his school fees. His mom could not afford to pay for school with the other children and the food and everything that they have to do. And so I said, "Well, how much does it cost to go to school here?" And so they talked for a minute, and they told me that to catch him up and to pay for the rest of the year, it was $45. It's like, $45 for the whole year? I was like, well, since we're friends, I might as well help him out, So we paid for his year of schooling so he could get back in school. But because of our building a well there, his family and his friends and his community had a chance for a better life and a better opportunity. In fact, just before we had built the well there, several months earlier, half the population of Peche had died from a cholera outbreak. And so we got a chance to go in there and bring some help that would make a difference. So 7 years has passed by now, and I'm still supporting him every year for his school. And he's gone through different grades, and I got a picture here and to show you, and that'll pop up there in a second. That's where we were when he was asking me. They're a little shy, and he wouldn't look straight at me, but now, the last time I was there, he got taller. And look at the confidence here. It looks like he's posing for GQ or something. Daniel. It's exciting to see what change you can bring in somebody's life if you just take action. And so today, I want to talk to you about imagination and generosity. I'll always remember that day when we became friends, because I didn't imagine what that moment could turn into. And imagination and dreaming are linked together. And when it's combined with action and generosity, it turns into a powerful force. And the possibilities that come from that are just powerful and unpredictable. I think about this scripture in the book of Ephesians as one of my favorites, and it just describes so much about what we're talking about. In Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 20, it says, now to him, God, who's able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. That just sounds so inspiring to recognize our God can do more than we can ask or imagine. And then he says, according to his power that's at work within us. To him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations. That last part includes all of us. When I think about this verse, I think of two things. And one thing is that I just think that we are wired for imagining things. We're wired to imagine and to dream. And it's as though we're created with that ability. And when this ability in us is unleashed, that's when powerful things can take place and lives can change. The second thing I think about is that it says in that verse that to him be glory in the church, that the local church is a community of people that if we together can take action and blend faith, then we can bring a big change in our world. With that verse and all the promises there, what is it that puts a ceiling on our imaginations and dreams? I don't know what you might be facing in your life today or what you might be going through, but maybe you're an individual who feels like the reality of this verse is a long way from your life. Maybe you've been through some disappointment or heartbreak or setback, and you don't feel like there's a power on the inside of you to make a big difference. But I know globally, one of the things that hinders people from imagining and dreaming is poverty. The multi-layers of poverty that people are overwhelmed with. And this steals the ability from people to imagine a better life. And so whether it's your personal crisis or the situations that you're facing, or in a global context, the poverty in this world, we all have that tension between trying to break through the difficulties around us and to be able to dream big dreams. The level of poverty that exists in the world today is massive. And sometimes it can feel overwhelming when you're right in the middle of it. And I've traveled to a number of countries and many times to Africa specifically. But what I found out is that no matter whether you're in a developing nation or that you are in Los Angeles, everyone has a dream. Everybody has dreamed at one point in their life, imagined something. And yet many times those dreams, that desire to make a difference in the world gets pushed down, gets chained up on the inside of us. And I really think if we help unlock the dreams and visions in others, at the same time, it unlocks that in us. At that time I met Daniel, I don't think he was imagining big dreams. I think he might be imagining getting another semester in school just so he might have the chance to have a little better life, or that might add a little hope to his situation. And but at our church, we are passionate about making a difference in the lives of people who are bound up by poverty and lack and the struggles that we hear about, not only in our own community here in Los Angeles, but around the world. And so one of the ways that we've gotten involved in helping people is through the global water crisis, the crisis of needing clean water. About a year and a half before we built this first well, I was at Starbucks at Highland and La Brea. And I was just getting my double tall cappuccino, and my mind was occupied on the things that fill my mind, like how to reach more people in LA and what are the Dodgers going to do about their hitting slump and those kind of things. And then I saw this headline on a newspaper there, and it said that UNICEF said that 1.1 billion people don't have access to clean drinking water. I'd never heard of this before. And I just thought, that's crazy, 1 billion people. The estimates at the time of the global population was 6 billion, so that's 1 in every 6 people in the world don't have access to clean drinking water. And I started thinking about that, and I couldn't get it off of my mind. 1 billion people. I thought, this is a problem that's so massive that it will probably never be resolved, but maybe we could help somebody. And I thought about what Jesus said in one place in the scripture where he said, if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to me, to one of the little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. And I realized there is something special in meeting the needs of people that honors God and represents his heart, and that we should do something about it. So many of you who attend Oasis might know about the water crisis and some of the information, but there are many people who still don't know some of the details, and so I want to tell you about some of the things that we learned. But as we began to grow in understanding this, we found that in many areas of the world that women and children walk on average 3.7 miles each day collecting water. And they carry as much as 40 pounds of water in some kind of container, either a jerry can like this or whatever container they can find. I have a photo here to show you that somebody has a container of water that they're carrying. And then, that's not the person, that's them. And they carry these containers like these and whatever they can handle. And they'll walk for hours, get this water, and bring it back home. And most of the time that the water that they find is contaminated because they find whatever source that they can. And they find themselves in places like this where they might just find a little small puddle of water to a lake, and to even something like this, where you can imagine what is happening in this water, that they would go there and take that water for their family. Then they're pouring water and filling it up and heading home. And they might boil the water, or they might pour it through an old cloth or t-shirt, trying to filter out some of the dirt or the contamination. But many times what we find out is that it's not only what you can see in the water, it's what you can't see in the water when you drink it that produces some of the problems that people face. This level of poverty not only hinders people's life and existence, but it hinders that natural part that God put in us to matter, to dream, to imagine how we could do life or how we could help others. Not only is it this struggle to find clean water, but it affects their health. And of course, health problems hinder your ability to dream and to imagine. The lack of clean water and sanitation causes 80% of all sickness and disease in developing countries. And it causes more deaths than war, AIDS, and famine combined. Approximately 1,800 children die every day from a water-related disease. Today, 1,800 children will die in this world because of the need for water. It's shocking to think of it. Then there is the lack of education, the impact of the education in their life. When a child's day is spent walking so far, getting water, and that whole process, it's next to impossible for them to go to school. And in fact, the research shows that 272 million school days throughout the world are lost each year because of water-related diseases. There's also the personal safety factor. Traveling in these remote areas to get water, not only is it just the physical damage of carrying that much weight, especially with young kids, but sometimes they find themselves in remote paths. I have a photo here to show you that would just show them as they go to get water, but in some of these isolated paths, they find themselves subject to attack or even sexual abuse. The multitude of complexities of this cycle of poverty begins to unfold, because you see, it's not just about a glass of water. It's health, it's education, it's family, it's community, it's progress, it's spiritual. How can they develop their faith? And there's so many dynamics to it. When we went to the school at Peche Village, and I had to go to the bathroom, they showed me where the latrine is. They had one for boys and one for girls, and I could smell the latrine about 20 feet away, and it was built to serve 50 people for 4 or 5 years. They had 200 students, and that this latrine had been functioning for 10 years. So we decided to try to restore some dignity while they're getting an education, and we built this latrine that had 10 toilets to be able to help that situation. So clean water is not just a good idea, it's a crucial necessity. The lack of it is a crisis in our world. And the results of clean water can turn people's life around. Release people to get educated, to develop, to grow, to dream, and to make a difference in this world. The UN reports that for every $1 invested in clean water, it returns approximately $4 to the local economy. So faced with all this information and learning and growing, and as we progress through the months and years, then I thought about these scriptures in the Bible, and one is in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy, and it says, "Do not show ill will toward the needy and give them nothing. Give generously to them so that without a grudging heart. Then because of this, the Lord will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to." And in the New Testament, it says something similar in 2 Corinthians chapter 9. "You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God." So I see in here that when we are generous and we help others, not only does God bring blessing and provision to us, but He uses it in a way to give thanksgiving to God, to honor Him, because that's what it's all about for us. And so in 2008, we started to get involved. I thought, well, we got to do something, and we can't help 1 billion people, but we could help somebody. We could help some community. And so I began to ask Oasis people to donate, and we partnered with different organizations, and we began building wells and developing water programs in different areas, like some that we've seen. And we thought about the idea of generosity. I came up with this idea. We bought a bunch of bottles of water that bulk, tore off the label, and had a new label printed up, and we just called it generosity water. And so I think it cost us 25 cents, and so every Sunday we'd sell them for $1 in the lobby and take 75 cents. And so it kind of served two things. It helped communicating the need to people that was going on out there, and then also just some money. But after a while I realized we could do better by just saying, "Hey, everybody, let's give." But the whole idea was, when you buy a bottle and you get something for yourself, while you're buying, you're giving. While you're doing something for doing something for somebody else. But we began to get involved with projects like this. This is what it looks like when they are drilling for water, and so it might go 50 feet in or 100 feet down and find a fresh water source. And then when the water comes out and they plug it with a hand pump, this water comes out like this, and people just love to see the difference it makes. And so many times over the years, we've had pictures of the community gathering around the well so they don't have to travel those hours, and we would get a plaque that would put there to honor the people that have given and made that possible. And one of the projects that we got involved with early on was with Watoto Church, Watoto Ministries out in Gulu, and they had built a new children's village, they call it. But these two things were funded by Generosity Water, and we would get water from a water source in the ground, put it in here, and send it out to all these homes in the area. And so it was just an exciting part to see this grow. And for several years, my son Jordan was the CEO of generosity.org, and there is a picture of Jordan here with some kids in a well site there. And through his leadership, we were able to do some great things. I'm so proud of him and the accomplishments that he made through the work of generosity. Last year, we were at what we have an annual gala called the Night of Generosity, and so we were there together. But over the years, we have funded 752 well projects in 19 nations. This year, we hope to make it 20, and 460,000 people served. When I met Daniel and saw that well, I was not imagining this. I remember one time saying to Jordan, wouldn't it be great if we could fund 100 wells someday? Now we're thinking of a lot more, But now Jordan is focusing on pursuing ministry and is not leading generosity.org. Anna Lenshorn is the executive director, and this is a picture of us there at one of the Night of Gen, and she's here on the front row. So Anna, why don't you just stand up and wave so they can see you? So once again, I'm taking a more present leadership role as a founder of generosity.org, and that's why I wanted to bring this to you and let you see what we're doing and how we've progressed over the years. But I want to ask you to imagine one amazing possibility today. And before I ask you to imagine this one amazing possibility, I just want to talk about a few ideas as we approach this thought. So first of all, picture what it might be like for you and your family to live without clean water. Right here in Los Angeles, working where you work, going to school where you go to school, living where you live, but you have to go out of your apartment or out of your house, and you got to go to a local lake or pond or someplace to find water, and then you put it in containers and you come back to your apartment and you boil it or pour it through some cloth or filtering plan, and you drink it hoping, I hope I don't get sick this month like I did last month. And that's not to picture something where there's guilt to it, but somehow when it becomes personal to us, the need gets closer to home, it engages our heart a little bit. But thinking about having to do all that and live how we live, a lot of the world does that. In 1994, we had this big earthquake called the Northridge earthquake, and my family, we lived out in the Northern Valley. We lived in Sylmar at the time, and the water pipes at Sylmar had some cracks and ruptures, and so they were telling people don't drink the water. So everybody was stocking up at the grocery store, getting all the bottled water. But if you didn't want to buy water, or there wasn't any, you could go 3 times a week to the local high school, and they had these big trucks out there, tankers full of water, and you could fill up containers to bring it to your home. I thought, wow, this is like living in another country where you got to go and get water and take it home. But I wonder if how we think about this would be different if it was our son or our nephew, our little brother, or our grandson that this picture would represent? What would it cause us to do? See, the water crisis is not they have this problem. The water crisis is we have this problem. Secondly, envision what would happen if everyone helped someone. What could happen if everyone did something to help someone? You know, something simple and seemingly unremarkable turned into something remarkable and life-changing for thousands of people just because of a decision to let's do something. But there's a lot of people who could say, let's do something. When I first thought about 1 billion people not having access to clean water, my focus was on the problem. 1 billion people. Oh my gosh, who could help 1 billion? I wasn't focusing on the 5 billion other people as a possible resource. We often do that in life. We focus so much on the problem, we don't pay attention to the potential of what could happen. But if everybody helped somebody, we could solve this problem. The UN has changed the numbers that we learned 7 or 8 years ago at 1 billion to around 663 million now. So progress has been made. And different organizations, hard to calculate the exact number, and different ones have different numbers, but when you see it dropping, like you think, okay, this could be solved. It might just take more people getting involved. And I don't know what might keep us disconnected from making a difference. Sometimes we look at what we have and we think, I don't have much. Just like the little boy who needed to feed all the hungry people. Hey, I just got these fish and loaves. But somehow when you engage the blessing of God and faith and action and generosity, that's where miracles take place. And more things can happen. What is it that would keep us from getting involved? You know, we think globally what keep people back is the poverty. But what about it personally? Is it our own distractions, our own focus, our own priorities? You know, Jesus told this powerful story about the Good Samaritan, and it was about a man who had been beaten and robbed on the road, and 2 people walked by and passed him by, and 1 person stopped. And if you think about it, it was a dangerous road, and so it would be normal for somebody to think, what could happen to me if I stop and help? But the Good Samaritan said, what might happen to him if I don't? And that's what happens when we say, let's get personally involved, let's do something, let's make a difference. And I want to ask you, what is it that God wants to do in your life? What would it take to remove the ceiling in your life? What I found is that when you help other people unlock their dreams, something gets unlocked in us. Sometimes along the way to do something amazing happens inside. The last thing I want you to think before I ask you this, the big amazing question is, picture what we could do if we all got involved and worked together. So it takes it from everybody doing their own thing to people joining together as a community. In Oasis Church, our community, one of our core values is compassion and generosity and honor. Honoring God, honoring the people who have needs around us, but just acting with compassion. I always felt troubled about the idea of going to a developing country and saying, let me tell you how to believe. But going and loving them in Jesus' name and earning the right to be heard. So that we give water, we give food, we give clothing, and people say, why are you doing this? It's like, oh, I'm glad you asked. and we are given permission to enter in. Compassion changes us, and compassion stirs generosity in our life. Generosity is because of the love that we've been given, that we give to others. Proverbs 11:25 says this, "The generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed." I love this verse because it's talking about our life gets bigger because we're generous, but I love it because it's talking about refreshing others. It seems so connected to this topic, refreshing people. The Apostle Paul tells us about a community of people when he writes in 2 Corinthians, and he talks about a people who, in chapter 8, in the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. And then he says, "See that you excel in this generous grace of giving." You know, I believe that we all have just like this capacity to imagine and capacity to believe and dream, that we have this instilled in us, in our DNA, to want to give, to be generous with our time, with our appreciation, with our life, with our attention. But maybe that generosity gene needs to be stirred up a little bit, because we think about how big the need is or how big the issue is, but we forget about what could take place when people get together in unity and do something powerful. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that what Jesus called us to do? To be a light in the world, to make a difference in the world. We could do that together. And what I found going into these other countries, I always come away like I've been given more than I give there. Because I meet these people and I look at the circumstances in their life, but I also see this simple faith in God, this infectious trust in Him and joy, and so willing to believe and so willing to respond. I always walk away thinking, man, I get frustrated and can have a bad day when my cell phone coverage isn't what it should be. And these guys have a much bigger picture of life. It doesn't matter what your situation is in life. We can all be generous. Generous is about doing what you can with what you have. Doing what you can do with what you do have now makes generosity. And it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, or you're educated or uneducated, whether you're young or older. We all can do something. And, people who are considered millennials, people around 18 years old to 35 years old, they love the idea of making a difference in the world like this. But you don't have to be young to make a difference. When we started Generosity, I was 55, all right? I was getting ready to pass the speed limit in age range. But other people join up with you. And it's not about going and starting your own nonprofit or starting your own organization. It's about getting together, especially here with the local church, the community, what we're doing and how that can be multiplied and how we can make a difference in the world. You know, your regular giving on a typical Sunday, a portion of that is always going to help us support other ministries and organizations. And so if there was more of us being faithful and giving and tithing and all that, there's more for us to be able to do around the world. It's about connecting with one another. So here's the question. I want to ask you to imagine that one amazing possibility now, and that is, can you imagine a world where everyone has access to clean drinking water? I think we could imagine that. I think that that's a possibility. When we take it personally, we get involved, we join it together, and we bring in that God factor. I love what Proverbs 11:24 says in the Message Bible. It says, "The world of the generous gets larger and larger." Our generosity inspires other people. Doing what we can do is, like I said, just doing what you can do. And like other charities and nonprofits, as we've grown over the years, we've had different people who have financial means or celebrities who've gotten involved and helped us in the campaign. One year, Katy Perry named generosity.org as their charity, and so as she did a tour, set money aside and helped us build some wells with that. And then Queen Latifah, a couple years ago, was a part of our Night of Generosity and helped build several wells, as did Megan Fox and Brian Green. They've been really faithful and loyal supporters for a while and helped us build a number of wells. But it's not just about those people. You know what? The majority is by people like you and me who just do what we can do. But when we do it together, then it multiplies. And we have even a greater impact. And I'm always inspired by what people do, how they get creative, because many individuals have come up with their own ideas. We've had people that have done garage sales or fundraisers at a club or at their school or in their neighborhood. We had a high school booster club at Calabasas High put on a fundraiser and help fund a well. And we've just had a variety of different things. There's a young girl in our church, Misha Lee, who is a dancer, and she has put together several little events and rallied people together and has actually funded 4 different well projects just by her getting motivated and saying, what do I have that I can do? And so this year on World Water Day in March, she got together and got some very notable choreographers to do some master dance classes, and had people in the dance community come and donate to be able to take the classes. And we got a photo of one of the classes there where they were, and they funded one whole well by just rallying people to come to dance class. And then they got to celebrate, going, look, this is a well that we funded. So they're on their way to continuing to do more. This young 15-year-old boy rallied his family and friends and people in the community and talked about the need, and we saw another well-funded, just one person and their friends. This is a sorority at University of Arizona, and they put on a special fundraiser and put the awareness out. And this story could be repeated hundreds of times. It's just people like you and me say, what could we do together? And the cool thing about being a part of a church is that we do have a community, and we can do something together and make a difference. At the end of this message today, before we have our time of worship, I'm going to give you an opportunity and ask you to be a part of it and to give. And it's a kind of a unique opportunity because this is not what we normally present to the public, but I want to ask you if you would consider giving something. And by giving something, you could help us fund the organizational aspect of generosity.org, so it allows us to do all of the different things that we've done with the wells and funding. And so when we invest in the operations of it, it builds a stronger organization so that we can impact even more people. And there are these cards that are in the seat back in front of you, but I'll call you to that here in just a moment. But I guess in closing, I just think reminding us of this question: can you imagine a world where everyone has clean water? I can, if we all take action, if we all care, if we all work together, if we all do what we can do. It can have an amazing impact.